Recording. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's Suzanne Gundersen of Transform Connections, where we offer stress resilience solutions that help people to self-manage stress. I'm joined today with my colleague, Leckey Harrison, and our topic today is going to be on the importance of co-regulation. First and foremost, what is it, and why do we need it, and how do we get it? But before we get started in our conversation, I'll let Leckey introduce himself.
Good morning. My name is Leckey Harrison, obviously, and I'm the owner of Raise Your Resilience, where we teach people we empower people to heal themselves from trauma, and inherent in that is learning how to regulate stress. And just this morning's subject starts as an infant.
This is so true, exactly. So continue. How is it started in infancy? How does co-regulation start in infancy?
Here's an example of co-regulation as adults, and that's the way you and I can look at each other. I can see your face. I can see your smile. I see that your eyes smile with your mouth, and I get to watch your body language like you get to watch mine. I can hear the inflections in your voice. That starts in infancy between a child, an infant, and its mom. The infant has needs and expresses them in noise, because it doesn't have words, doesn't even have concrete thoughts yet. The attuned mom co-regulates with the child when it meets those needs. And there's more and more science coming out now about the child's ability to look at mom's face and see those things. And then the child begins to learn that if I do such and such, then this person's going to meet my needs. And that's what it means to co-regulate. I get to determine that my needs are going to be met by the response of the person who's caring for me, even though they're not thinking that. That's just their sensations.
Right.
As adults, then, I get to determine whether or not you're safe. And part of the question is, how do we get this? And that's an interesting question. But there's something inside the human brain that runs, it's called neuroception, that runs below consciousness, and its ability determines for me whether or not you're a safe person to expose myself to be vulnerable with. And that ability then it's like when you're sitting with somebody and you're on the same wavelength. It's like putting a really comfortable glove on. I mean, you just boom, there's a synchrony there, and you know it and you feel it. That's what it means to be able to co-regulate, is to be able to move back and forth with each other, know what to say, when to say, be able to deal with your feelings in that situation. That's the essence of co-regulation.
Yeah, I think I call it kind of like the symphony of connection. It's really just a beautiful exchange between two nervous systems and how they're helping each other, maintain safe connection. But
Exactly.
I love, to start this conversation going back to being an infant. When children are born, they're 100% dependent on their caregiver. They don't have any ability to take care of themselves. And so it is only through their coos and their cries and how they express themselves that they're asking for that kind of co-regulation with their caregiver. And that co-regulation is really something that they require in order for them to feel safe and secure in their development. So often we don't have a lot of caregivers that are regulated in themselves to offer that co-regulation in the capacity that's needed by the child. And this is where there's a lot of adaptive strategies that get developed in childhood that kind of end up to be physical, emotional, and mental distress and disorders as the child is raised and into adulthood. But co-regulation really beginning with birth, that you're a helpless little baby looking to be taken care of and nurtured and attuned to by your caregivers, and that experience of being attuned to, meaning having your needs be met in the way that you need them to be met, in the time that you need to be met, and the comfort in the way that you need them to be met. That's how we experience co-regulation as an infant, because we can't do it ourselves. We don't know how to regulate our bodies, our emotions, or our thoughts until we get a little bit older, upward of 7, 8 years old. So really, between birth and 7, we're really needing someone to help us understand what's happening in our body and how to calm down, how to regulate our emotions, how to regulate our thoughts, so that we can become, have the ability to be more regulated for ourselves, and be in life and handle what may be coming at us. So co-regulation starting in infancy, it's really an opportunity for real bonding to take place between a caregiver and a child, um, and a safe connection, learning what safety really means. So co-regulation is, something, like I said, not many people had the quality experience that they were looking for, and why we've got a lot of people living in the world with, disorders and just, and symptoms that have them still looking for things outside of themselves in needing co-regulation. And as we've grown into adults now, we still need to be able to do that very uh, primal, thing for survival, which is to connect with another. So as adults, um, we're learning about regulation, right? We're learning what it means to be regulated and how to regulate on our own. But the first step really is to find a safe connection with something and be able to regulate. And I feel like, especially in the adult world right now, in the last probably decade or so, maybe longer, we've just seen a huge epidemic of co-regulation happening between humans and pets. People have all their emotional support animals. Why? Because it's another mammal that they are co-regulating with, through the facial expression of the animal and the personality of the animal and the attentiveness in the animal living in the present moment. All things that we would want from a human to co-regulate. But I think we've started the co-regulation process and been conscious to it probably for a decade or so, or maybe longer, with starting with, human to animals. But even as adults now, we're kind of learning that we need to get off that dependency of animals and learn to embrace our humanness and start connecting with other humans, and co-regulating in that experience, having a co-regulation experience with another human. And that really is to, like you said, pay attention to someone's inflection in their voice, watch their facial muscles and see if they're smiling, notice if their eyebrows are lifted, if they're engaged and excited to be with you, or if they're giving you some other type of signal that would maybe threaten your connection and make you feel like you're not safely and securely attached.
It's an interesting point with animals. And I've never considered cats much of a co-regulation animal because they're just so self-centered. Dogs, on the other hand, don't talk back. They're always glad to see you. They don't disagree with you. So there is, I think, an element of that. The self-regulation process is designed to start between 5 and 8, so that there's a sense of autonomy that needs to develop, but they already have some concepts of co-regulating so that they can learn to self-regulate, which requires certain portions of the brain to be functioning. And all of that gets derailed if there's several things that happen. One, you have abusive parents or neglectful parents, which could be because of their own issues, or, as I was listening to Dr. Levine the other day, he talked about when he was a child. So it was pretty much about the same time I was a child. And there was a general philosophy around child rearing that you just let the child cry. It doesn't
Sure.
run the,
Yeah.
it doesn't run the show. And so he said, all that creates then, though, is neglect. Gabor Mate's experience, on the other hand, was that of war. So his mom, who was stressed and also Jewish, and his dad, had their own issues. They had no capacity. So they had a neglectful situation with him just because they were so scared for their own lives. And that makes perfect sense. That type of environment derails the co-regulating, which then derails the self-regulating, because we're now so busy trying to get our needs for attention and attunement and attachment met that when it comes time to autonomize, we don't do that either. And then
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have so many dysregulated people raising children who are dysregulated, who are perpetuating the cycle. And here we are living in this day and age where we're awakening to knowing the value of regulation, but having to go back to really understanding that what we're doing in our attempts to regulate is really just, they call it narcissism, taking other people's energy. We're really clawing at, the external world to validate us and give us what we need. And like little children that we've never grown up, regulated to be different in our adulthood. And so there's a real opportunity for us to start to embrace some shifts around how to really truly co-regulate now, and as a ding personal responsibility in your adulthood.
And that's why healing with a provider is an important issue, because that co-regulating is built around an actual physiological experience, a physiological need. So making that reconnection at that point with somebody who's there for you to validate and witness allows for that process to rewire itself. Because I think we're hardwired to go through certain experiences that species afford. I could say mammalism evolves that way.
Yeah.
And that's where we get to learn as adults how to co-regulate, so that we can go through that experience of autonomy again and learn how to do that with respect, with boundaries, and other aspects that make autonomy capable. And then we come back into that situation of co-regulating.
Well, regulated autonomy, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
So what we really were trying to share with everyone listening today is that, we all grew up in dysfunctional types of scenarios, whether it was the two examples that Leckey had shared, or another type of scenario where your caregiver just couldn't offer you that capacity, to be able to regulate through them, to help your body, your emotions, and your mind settle and come to a place of peace and wisdom. And so now as adults, we've got a lot of dysregulated people out there, myself included, for so long. And what we need to do is connect with other safe people that can help us, build that regulation experience, build that regulation muscle through these types of safe experiences that we can have with another. So I just wanted to thank Leckey for joining us today in our conversation around co-regulation. And I know that there's another, there's another video we're going to be teeing up next around self-regulation. So we're going to get into kind of making the leap from, well, what do I do about the co-regulation I didn't receive or that I'm not receiving? And how do I kind of get into more of a space where I can learn to regulate for myself? So thanks everybody for listening today. If you have any questions about our conversation or our video, please pop them in the comments below, and we will see you on the next video.
Bye.